This week I've been working on the expedition system in Primus, mainly polishing it, improving how it looks, and making sure each expedition feels different from the last. Comparing what I had before to what I have now, there's been some really big improvements. The roads now curve and generate in a more natural way, the nodes look better than what they did, and I've started adding things like road events which can happen while your gladiators are travelling. It's still far from finished, and there's obviously a lot more testing and refining to do, but it's starting to feel like more of a proper sort of gladiator expedition stuff. Now, the main idea behind expeditions is loosely inspired by how Roman gladiators would travel from their ludus, as in their gladiator school, to different arenas. Historically, a lot of the journeys probably wouldn't have particularly been that long, because this is obviously a game, I obviously want to make sure there's more variety. So at the moment, there is a short, standard, and grand expedition for you to take. The longer the expedition, the more opportunities and risk you'll encounter before reaching the arena. But the main purpose of travelling isn't to get to the destination, it's about building up crowd favour before the fight begins. At the beginning of the expedition, you have zero crowd favour. If you reach the arena without building any up, the crowd will be entirely against you and strongly in the favour of your opponent. That matters because the crowd event can happen during combat, and if the audience dislikes you, you're far more likely to get the worst outcome. This becomes a lot more dangerous when you are doing arenas with multiple bouts of fights, where if you've got 2 or 3 bouts that are back to back and you have very low crowd hype or crowd favour, this is obviously going to cause a lot more problems. So as you travel, you have more opportunities to improve your reputation. Perhaps you'll protect a village from bandits and word begins to spread of your gladiators. Maybe you hold a parade through a town which earns you crowd favour, but increases your fighters' fatigue before the arena. There could also be decisions where you have to choose between helping people, conserving supplies, and resting your gladiators, or taking a risk for more attention. For me, this fits the game much better. I don't want Primus to solely be about killing your opponents, but a successful gladiator was also about putting on a show and earning the support of the crowd. If you neglect them, this could turn against you and make your life considerably harder. And that's the atmosphere I'm trying to create. I want the expedition system to feel smoother. I want it to feel unique, as if you are always trying to pick and discover which route is best to take to get to the arena, and ensuring that when you do get to the arena, you are in a good enough position. Now, these changes aren't yet applied to the public demo at the time of recording, but these are things which I'm going to continue to work on and refine over the upcoming weeks as I get closer to releasing the full game and obviously updating the game demo. Another thing I worked on this week was adding the arena announcer. I recorded several voice lines myself and then used 11 Labs to transform my voice into something that better suited the arena. I went for a younger and more enthusiastic announcer rather than a very deep or serious voice. This was a bit of a difficult thing because I was trying to envision what a Roman, announcer would seem like, but I'll play a few examples so you can hear what it currently sounds like in the game.
Citizens of Rome, cast your eyes upon the sand. The crowd makes a decision. Punishment!
Obviously, there's still some improvements to be had, and I still want to obviously refine this better. But honestly, I think it makes a big improvement to the atmosphere of the arena. And that's sort of what I'm going for, because I want to feel that when you are fighting in the arena, it actually feels like the atmosphere, where you can feel the tension from the music, you can feel the atmosphere from the crowd, from the announcer, from the crowd events that occur, and really just make it feel like that tense environment that it should be. I also started experimenting with proper idle animations for the gladiators. This has been quite challenging because honestly it's very new to me. I ended up giving AI one of my Retiarius images and asked it to basically walk me through how I could turn it into an idle animation. It guided me through things such as taking the image into a photopea and then separating it into different body parts: the head, the torso, arms, legs, weapons, and so on and so on. I then imported these into Unity and started animating their position and rotation separately with the instruction that AI was giving me. The result wasn't actually that bad. It's still not good enough for the finished game, but it was an interesting first attempt. And I think with enough refinement, I think the approach could be pretty viable. The main issue is scope. Now, what I found from experience is that it's very easily for the scope of my project to get out of hand. I know this from Scarred Steel, so I don't really want to make the same mistake with Primus. Now, when I talk about scope, I mean the idle animations for all of the enemies in Gladiator. This being gladiators, this being animals, etc., for both the player and the enemies. And I might be looking at making additional enemies like bandits for some of the road events. So that's a lot to look at. And likelihood is there will probably be, I don't know, maybe like at least 30 or close to 40 different types of enemies. I just don't know yet. But the point being is, well, do I make an animation for every single one, right? Ideally, no. But we're going to have to see how that all looks like. Now, there was some things around potentially needing to do a bit of like painting to fill in maybe like some gaps when it comes to animations. But I don't really know if I need to do that. But again, I think what it will be the case of is just basically spending a lot of time just basically working on improving um, how it all looks, right? Because if the animations themselves don't look right, then obviously that's not going to work as well as it should do. I think probably what I'll do is I will just separate, or I'll make sure I have all of the sprites of the gladiators that I want to use and that I know is good. And then I'll probably look at separating all of them and applying the same animation to all of them and basically seeing where we need to change things. So that'll be an interesting thing to do, but overall, I think that's pretty good of a path forward anyway. So looking at next week, likelihood is I'll just be spending the time making the idle animations. Now, I don't want to go crazy with it because obviously I want to make sure the scope is fairly compact, but I do want to actually make animations that look good or at least look a lot better than what we currently have. And I think what I'm also finding is that this is the period where lots more ideas come to mind about the game in terms of things that I could add and improve to the game, which is fine. However, a lot of it is then just thinking about, well, is this a must have or is this a would be cool? Right? Because, for example, with the arena announcer, for me, that was a must have. I really want the arena announcer, and obviously, I'm going to improve on that. For the arena announcer, I had basically ended up recording the voice lines or the voiceovers, and I used 11 Labs to edit them in terms of how they sounded, and I like it, right? However, I was also thinking about making voiceovers for all of the 27 head of houses, right? It could be like a few voice quips or something, but again, I was like, well, that's not a necessity, right? It would be cool to have, but it's not like something that I need. And that's the sort of thing I'm being conscious of. And so, those other ideas that are more cool to have, I'm just trying to push to the back, right? Push to the back. Let's just get the thing to focus on that we need the most. So that's pretty much where we're at this week. Overall, yeah, really, really quite happy with how we improved on the expedition map stuff. There's still some improvements to have, and what you see right now is obviously not the final version of the expedition map, but we are making some good strides and hopefully going to be in time for where we're at. If you haven't played the Primus demo, it is released at the time of recording. It's not fully updated, obviously, at the time of recording, but it is the first public build. So if you do want to get an idea for the game, that is that. And if you want to support the game, then I'd appreciate a wish list, and that would help me very, very much. But with that said, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you soon.